started when I was 21 years old. And I just thought that I just asked a lot of questions, I think. And I just said what I thought, or I would weigh in on things without fear or insecurity. I would just kind of throw it out there. And so some of that boldness, I think, helped me.
Welcome to the Game of Her Own podcast, a podcast about women who work in sports. I'm your host, Jahaan Blake. After 15 years of working for 3 major league teams, including the Boston Red Sox, Los Angeles Dodgers, and the Chicago Cubs, I discovered the one thing I loved the most was helping women in sports shatter glass ceilings and take their seat at the table. I loved it so much that I made a business out of it. I have the honor of coaching high-performing women in the sports and entertainment industry and supporting them as they go after exactly what they want in their career. So if you are feeling tired of waiting on the sidelines, done being overlooked for promotions, and you're ready to pull ahead of the pack and take your career to the next level, girl, I'm here for it. I also created the Game of Her Own podcast to support you as well. We are here to share the stories of incredible women who work in sports and entertainment. These leaders and trailblazers will inspire you with their success and the lessons they've learned along the way to the top. Ladies, there is nothing like women empowering women. I am so honored you're here.
What would you do if you were given a job offer and you knew it was $35,000 less than what was offered to your male counterpart? My next guest, Pam Kenn, senior executive for the Boston Red Sox, tells us exactly what she did when that happened to her. Pam gets real with us and does not hold back. She tells us the good and the bad on her journey from intern to senior vice president of community, alumni, and player relations. She talks about what it was like to be the first female director of media relations for the Sox, gives advice for working with players and media, and we both share our starting salaries from when we first became full-time with the Boston Red Sox. Pam is going to give you such incredible advice. You do not want to miss this. All right, friends, are you ready? Well, let's do this. All right, Pam, welcome to the Game of Her Own podcast. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited.
Me too. All right, I want to go back in time and tell us when you first fell in love with sports.
I was thinking about this, and I would say birth. I don't actually remember not loving sports. I think as a daughter of sports-loving parents with 3 older brothers, it was a birthright to love sports. So I don't exactly remember a moment. I always grew up playing sports and being from the Boston area. I always just loved all the Boston sports teams. So I think I was just kind of born with it.
What sports did you play?
I played softball. I played basketball, which is funny since I'm 5'3", but I loved it. I did cheerleading. Funny because at the time, cheerleading was like the closest thing I could get to football because I really loved football. So girls weren't really playing football then. So I was a cheerleader. And that's pretty much it. But I went to a lot of my brother's hockey games, lacrosse games, wrestling, all that sort of stuff.
I forget that you're 5'3". Like, I think it's your personality that makes you seem a lot taller for sure.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, no. I'm 5'3" on a good day.
Or maybe it's because back in the day you were wearing heels and walking around the office.
You know what? That's fair. There was a time period where I was wearing 3 or 4 inch heels, and I don't know how I did it. I mean, it was bananas. Don't get me wrong. My feet were killing me, but I thought it brought more presence. Actually, I did have someone tell me once, guys don't like girls in flats. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, that makes me feel good about the times I wear flats. So just a lovely pieces of advice men give you in your life.
You're like, thanks. But I remember, same here. I remember walking around the ballpark in Fenway Park in heels. I don't know why.
What were we doing?
I don't know.
I ruined all of them because I'm walking literally on pavement or I'm walking on the dirt. So all of our shoes have that orangey brown rim from being on the warning track. Or those little rubber things on your heels. I've worn them all down to the metal. And then I keep walking on the metal.
That's the worst noise literally in the world. I would throw away shoes because of that. I remember one time it was rain. It just started raining out of the blue. And the warning track, it was just mud. And I'm like, you know what? Sarah, my boss at the time, for people who don't know Sarah, like, I think I should expense these shoes because they were ruined because of work.
Yeah. Well, knowing Sarah, she said, absolutely.
Yeah, she laughed at me. She was like, no, why are you wearing fancy shoes in dirt? It's your own fault.
Yeah, that's on you. Yeah.
All right. Tell everybody what you do now and who you do it for.
I am currently the Senior Vice President of Community, Alumni, and Player Relations, which is just a lot of words. But I sort of see it as two different jobs. There's a community and player relations part. And if I'm being honest, I don't as much handle the player relations because I have this wonderful senior director below me or with me, Sarah Narachi, who handles all the player stuff. So she is much better at that than I could ever be. So she handles that. And that's sort of how the players interact with the community and charities and meet and greets and things like that. And then, but I more do sort of community outreach, being out at community centers or being on boards or just sort of figuring out how to interact with nonprofit organizations and bringing them to the park or bringing us outside the park. And then alumni relations, which I'm sure as long as we've known each other, I've been dabbling in all along. Sort of started working with former players when I began with the Red Sox. And then I've never really wanted to let it go because as cool as everyone thinks current players are, retired players are the best. So I've really enjoyed my time doing that.
Okay, so Senior Vice President with the really long title for the Boston Red Sox. It is 2021 and you started with the Red Sox in 2000.
Yep.
As a
intern. As an intern. I know. And it can happen. It's a thing that can happen. Yeah. Who knew?
I mean, that's okay. So just thinking, I mean, there's so many questions I have, but let's start with the fact that you've been there for 21 years, right? And women will call me and say things like, I've been with this organization for 10 years and I started out as a intern and it's impossible to move up. Like it just takes a long time. They still see me as an intern. They pay people who come in externally much more money. So you are living proof that you can start as an intern and become an SVP. I feel like this is a loaded question, but how did you do it?
I don't know. I think it's funny, I think over the years, just in looking into women in sports and women in different male dominated fields, the thing you see over and over again, and this is just women in business, I guess, is we're always saying we were lucky or the timing was right or all these things. And so I do sadly default to that sometimes. And sadly, I do sort of believe that there's a lot to timing. And there's a lot to being at the right place at the right time. But I would say probably what helped me is I was always open to different things and new things. I was always willing to work hard. And I always brought my full self there. So I always brought my personality. I always brought my passion and even my insecurity, which I think sort of as much as people see it as a weakness, it's a little bit of an asset because it showed my vulnerability. So I think that helped me. But where I am now is not where I started. As I said, I started as an intern. I was literally cutting newspaper clippings out of the newspaper and taping them into a book or making copies or doing stats. I was doing a variety of things. And then it became former players. And then it became, we can get into this later, but I was a media relations director for 4 years. So I just was always sort of up for whatever the need was and for doing new things. And I was lucky enough to be around some really amazing people who helped teach me along the way. So.
Okay. So you're always open to new things. How did you find out about these opportunities? Like they don't always, come up on the internal job board. They kind of just sometimes are like, all of a sudden someone new or somebody internally is doing a new role that you had no idea about. So how did you find out or how did you advocate for yourself when it came to those things?
It's funny. I never actually thought about this before, but I would say the biggest thing is our organization, when I started, was small and I actually preceded this ownership group. So it was very small. And I think you just got to know people. And I just always loved talking to people and getting to know people and finding out things and learning about what they do. And I just would learn where things were changing or where departments were going to see a need in something. Or I always was just talking about the organization. And I remember transitioning from sort of this umbrella public affairs into media relations. It was because a coworker was going to have a baby and I knew that they were going to pull back or leave. So they started training me to do that. Like I showed interest in that. So it was sort of about just knowing people, but genuinely knowing people, not to move ahead for me. It was genuinely knowing people and also seeing like, oh, that might be interesting. I could do that, or I could help, or maybe I'll just help until you come back or whatever. So I do think that a lot of it for me, I mean, I never saw job postings. Even now, like job postings, I mean, I'm sort of far enough along in my career that a job posting internally is not for me anyway, but I never looked at a job posting internally because I always feel like I knew what was coming and what was happening and just try to stay close to that. So I would say knowing your organization, knowing the people in it, knowing how it works so you know when change is coming. I would say that would be what got me where I am.
Now you are very outspoken. You do not appear shy to me. So would you tell people like, I want to help, you would see opportunities and would kind of predict them, right? And anticipate that they're coming. Would you just be bold and say like, I want to work on this. Like, I want to move up. I don't want to be an intern anymore. I don't want to be a director anymore. I want to keep growing. Like, how did you approach it?
It's funny how it changed over time. When I was young and stupid, I didn't have, I mean, we're all young and stupid. I didn't have the fear. I wasn't afraid to say. I'm much more afraid in some areas now, or at least more cautious than I was then. I was like this, as you said, like this outspoken kid at the time. I mean, I started when I was 21 years old. And I just thought that I just asked a lot of questions, I think. And I just said what I thought, or I would weigh in on things without fear or insecurity. I would just kind of throw it out there. And so some of that boldness, I think, helped me. I also think when it was a new ownership and they were not from Boston, and then there was this Boston, I've lost a little bit of my accent over the years, but back then I was coming in hot with my losing of the R.
You sure did.
Yeah. So I think that sort of boldness and fearlessness and unafraid to ask questions helped me. It helped me learn about all the things. So when I was an intern, I then came back part-time. I finished my senior year of college because at the time, UMass gave me 12 credits for my internship. So my senior fall, I worked at the Red Sox. After the internship was over, I went back to UMass, finished my college career, graduated, and I was looking for a job. And my internship director was like, you shouldn't go back to the Red Sox because you'll never get a full-time job there. And I was like, okay. So I applied for other jobs and I got a job with like some internet company. I think at the time they worked on the Patriots website. And I was like, oh, Patriots, that's for me. But I had this tugging thing at me. And I went back to him and I said, my internship director, I was crying. And he's like, what are you crying about? I'm like, I got to go back to the Red Sox. Like, they'll take me back $8 an hour, $7 an hour, whatever it is. I got to go back there. And like, I can't imagine myself anywhere else now. And he's like, fine, whatever, do it. And so when I got back, so then it was, how am I going to get full-time? How am I going to get full-time? And I would see other people get full-time and I'd be like, what the fuck is that? Like how much harder do I have to work? And I was a little bit outspoken in that at the time. But once I got in full-time, that was like the moment where I was like, all right, I can figure this out. It was like such a thing to cross to get to the official full-time status.
Yes, I remember that all too well. And those words you just said, you were like, you're looking around, you're like, wait, how did this person become full-time? Wait, there was an opportunity. Right. I didn't even know. And like you, like I genuinely just wanted to get to know people and learn. And like, I felt like this may be the wrong way to say it, but I almost felt like it was camp. Like I loved going to work. Like I made nothing, just like you. Like, I mean, I think there's debate on how much the ambassadors got paid. Some people say $5.25. I thought it was $6.25. Whatever it was not a livable wage, but you wanted to be around all the time because you wanted to.
What was your first full-time salary?
The amount?
Yeah.
Oh,
at the Red Sox.
$32,500.
You want to know what mine was?
Oh my God,
$25,000.
Stop.
$25,000. And it was a pay cut, honestly. It was
a huge pay cut.
Yeah, because laws have changed now that you can be full-time and get overtime, but at the time you couldn't. So I was working like crazy hours part-time. And then when I got full-time and they gave me $25,000, my heart was like, I mean, yay, but like really? Because I also didn't understand benefits and all that. I was just like, I heard that number and I was like, trying to be happy. like dream come
Yes.
true, but oh my God, what am I going to do with that? And
Yes.
thankfully, I will say, I'm not afraid to say this, Charles Steinberg, who I've heard your podcast. I know he's been spoken about a lot.
He has.
Yeah, such a mentor. But I remember the next year he got me to 30,000. I mean, that's a huge percentage jump. And still to this day, I bet if I talked to him, he would bring up, I got you that 5,000 more. I'm like, I know, you really got me on the path. We're really moving in the right direction. But yeah, that was a huge jump then. So
I'm so glad you asked that question because nobody talks about salaries.
I know.
No, we talk about what we made when we were hourly.
Yep.
I like forgot like how much I made. I like tell my clients because I'm like, okay, listen, this is where I was 20 years ago, but just to put things into perspective when they're trying to compare their salaries. But gosh, I wish, what was your title when you were made full-time? Like what level?
Assistant.
Okay.
Like alumni relations assistant or something, or public affairs assistant.
Wouldn't it have been nice if like we could have talked to each other? Like I can't imagine you asked me that question 20 years ago. I'd have been like, I'm not telling you.
I wouldn't tell you now.
No, I'm not telling you, but like, just to know, okay, I was a coordinator making 32, you know what I mean? Like you're an assistant making 25. Okay. So what's the person above us in that manager role making? Like, what does this look like? Is this what we're going to make? Are we going to even get close to six figures anytime?
It never even crossed my mind. Crossed my mind for a long time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Same. I remember talking to Charles and I just didn't even he's like, what's your goal salary? And I didn't give what my goal salary was. I gave what I thought it would be in sports.
Yep.
You're so conditioned to think you're not going to get paid.
Right. Well, and also you're afraid of them saying, oh yeah, that's not going to happen. It's like that's so deflating, you know?
Yeah. I kind of feel like we were brainwashed.
Oh, yeah.
Which is maybe why I'm doing this job that I'm doing now.
I actually do have a salary story. Is equal pay day today?
It was
yesterday. By the time it comes out, I do have a story on that. I was in the media relations department in 2005, 6, 7, 8. And at the end of 2008, my boss left. He had started the Texas Rangers. He returned to the Texas Rangers. So the director of media relations position was open. And I went for it. That actually I did apply for because I had to. They weren't going to promote me. So I had to go through the process of interviewing and all that stuff. And so I went through it. Well, at the time, other people in baseball were applying for it. And I knew them because in PR, at least in baseball, I'm guessing it's like this in all major sports, but PR people all know each other because you travel and you go to each other's parks and you're dealing with the same sort of media. So you all know each other. So I was talking to people, like people reaching out to me as a colleague, like, hey, I'm going for this job. Are you going for this job? What do you think? Like we're having all these conversations. And at the time I wanted the job, but I also was okay with not getting the job as long as whoever was going to get it, I knew and liked. And not that I had any control over that, but there was one person who was in the running for it that I was a friend of. And we would talk a lot. And I would say, if you get this job and I don't, I'm here for it. Like, if you want me, I will be here. I'll be your number 2. And I'll get you through this because being in Boston is hard. And I think that gave him a level of comfort too. Like, I'm coming from a smaller market. Should I do this? I don't know. And so I was just like, whatever happens, no hard feelings. I'm here for it, whatever. And he's like, great. Well, he ended up getting the job. And I knew this. And he and I would still talk. And he's talking to me about, I just don't know. I just like the money is pretty good. All this stuff. I'm like, is it? And he's like, yeah, the money. He's like telling me. So he's telling me how much money they offered him. And I was like, oh, awesome. And he's like, yeah, and they gave me more, whatever. I'm like, wow, good for you. Like, awesome. All right, well, I'm here. He turns down the job. So I am sort of happy, sort of not. Like, I kind of thought like this would be good. Like I could learn more before I'm ready. And am I ready? And all that. I was happy because then I felt like I still had a shot. Well, they made me, they were going to open it back up. And I was like, well, why don't you just tell me I didn't get the job then? And then I was like, because maybe I'll just pull out. Like, if that's going to be what, if you don't want me, they're like, no, we want you. We just want to make sure. And so long story short, I get offered the job. What they don't know is I know how much they offered to him. The difference was $35,000 a year, $35,000. And so you got the job and here's what the salary is. I was like, oh, okay. Nope. And which is funny because I was never one to ask, like, I don't remember ever really fighting for money. And honestly, when I did, I feel like I didn't get it. Like it was just sort of, you were at the Red Sox long enough, I think, to know that, or in sports long enough to know that getting more money can be difficult. There's always sort of this like everyone wants to work there kind of thing. But when I heard that, I was like, okay, I'm not one to cause a stir. I do have my outspoken side, but I'm also not one to like fight for myself in these. Like I just wasn't there on that confidence yet, but I was like, this is not right. And so I told them, I was like, look, I know what you offered him. So we're going to have to close that gap. And they did, in fairness, they did close the gap, not fully, but decently. And then it just sort of got me the next year. I was like, okay, you told me it was experience based. It wasn't man, woman based. It was that he had more experience in this particular job than you did. And so a year later, I was like, okay, now I have another year experience. So remember you said you weren't going to give me that money because I didn't have the experience? Well, now I do. So let's revisit that salary. So I'm not going for a 3% raise. Like we got to close that gap more. So that's sort of what my salary experience has been there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So you went in and you're like, you told him the truth. Like, I know how much you offered him.
I did.
What was their reaction? Because I feel like I asked that question because I feel like a lot of times we all make up stories in our head about how we think the other person, HR, whoever, is going to react to what we say. Something like that, right? Because it's going to be uncomfortable for a minute, right? So like how
I make up all the stories. All I do is I'm always making up stories in my head of how things are going to play out, and I'm wrong so much.
Yes,
but
same.
Yeah. She took it, and I will say, almost everybody involved in this is gone now for whatever reason. They've moved on or whatever. So the person at the time I was talking to, I think she was stunned. She was definitely surprised. I think they never realized, because it's unique, right? I mean, who's talking to the competitor throughout the whole process? Like, I think I was unique in that way. And I was like, I'm not fighting you for this job. I'm supporting you while going for this job. So I think they really didn't understand. Like, I talked to this guy a lot. So I think, it was surprising to them that I knew. And then, so there was a little bit of pause, if I remember correctly, just sort of like a not startled, but surprised. And then it was, okay, but you aren't the same people. Like there is different experience and different skills that I'm sure you'll get to that you just haven't acquired yet. Which in fairness, I got. Like I definitely saw the difference. I just didn't see a $35,000 difference. So again, we closed that gap and we kept closing it.
So you said, okay, like mentally, or maybe you put it on your calendar, you're like, a year later, we're having this discussion again, and you held them to it. How did that go?
Yeah, it could have gone better, only because there's just the process of here's your review, here's what you did well, here's what you could do better, and here's your salary. It's like, okay, nope. Like that's pretty much what happened. I was like, yeah, no, you're going to have to do better than that. And it wasn't that I completely armed them in advance. It was more like when that moment came, I was like, you know what? No, I killed myself doing this job. It was so much harder. That first year was so much harder than I could have imagined, that now you're going to have to pay me for it. And it wasn't just, at first it was the excitement of getting the job and what it was going to be like to be a woman as a director of media relations for the Boston Red Sox. Like that was awesome. But then it was like, no, this was really, really fucking hard. And I didn't sleep and I was always stressed and I would cry. Like this was tough. And now you're going to have to pay me for this because I work harder than anybody. So that's kind of where it all, and in fairness, my boss went back to get me more money and she got me more money. So that was good. Yeah.
Well, I feel like people are listening right now and they are like fired up. They're probably like going to press pause and be like, I'm going to go write an email. Like, no, this isn't working. I mean, so I heard you say something. They told you what you could do better, but you still said, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
But I still want more money. So you didn't let the fact that you weren't perfect stop you for asking what you're worth. Is that right?
Jahaan, if I waited to be perfect, I wouldn't ever get a raise. It's funny. I have taken criticism so much better in the last 10 years than I ever did before that. But I knew I wasn't perfect. I knew, I didn't know what I was doing some of the days. Like, honestly, like I had to just follow my gut and figure it out and make mistakes. So I was very clear that I was going to get some negative feedback. But to me, what I brought outweighed what my negatives. And it's so funny to hear me say this out loud now because this sounds very confident. I was I wouldn't say I was confident in that moment. I was exhausted and I was no, I wouldn't say I was at the breaking point. I was just more like, no, I need more for this. Almost like I need more credit. And then to me at that time, credit was money. Like I just needed to know like that I am earning close. It definitely wasn't earning what I should have, but close to what I should have. So yeah, it wasn't even about confidence. It was just more like I'm physically suffering to do this job and I need more.
Were you ready to walk away if they didn't give you what you wanted?
No, nope, I definitely wasn't. I know I would have been extremely bitter. And when she did come back, I was very appreciative. I wasn't like, oh, well, finally. I actually ended up being, for better or for worse, I was very happy when she came back with more money. But no, I wasn't going to walk. And I always think they probably knew that. I'm not sure if they knew that or not, because I always feel like that's the one thing for me at the Red Sox is no one ever thinks I'm going to leave. Like, I feel like a lifer, like I love it so much. And I feel like nobody ever thinks I'm going to leave, which could hurt my negotiating. But I wasn't ready to leave. So it just happened to be, I just felt so strongly to at least say it out loud. But I do feel like the impassioned plea and the recognition of how hard I was working and how much of myself I was putting on the line really helped get there.
Yeah.
Hey, Jahaan here. I hope you're enjoying the interview. I'm sure you are thinking about your own career right now and how you can pull out in front of the pack to take your career to the next level. For 18 years, supporting women in sports has been my favorite part of my career, and I would love to support you. Whether it's joining my free Game of Her Own community or one of my one-on-one coaching programs, I am here for you. Send me a message at jblake@jahaanblake.com or DM me on Instagram @jahaanblake, and let's schedule a time to have a free session. I cannot wait to hear from you. All right, let's get back to why you're here.
All right. So you say you also brought yourself, your full self to work. You also brought your insecurities to work. Now, I would not admit that back in the day. Now I talk about it all the time, but I would not admit that back in the day, nor would I wouldn't let anybody see it, or I would try my hardest not to let anybody see it, but you brought it. And how did you deal with it? Like, how did you just bring your insecurities and talk about them?
Did you think I was insecure?
Not even a little bit.
Yeah.
You have this tough exterior.
This is though. We are the same in that way. Like I worked with you a long time, and insecure is the last thing, or anxious. Like I actually just listened to your anxiety podcast. Like that whole podcast was eye-opening for me. Not that I'm surprised about anxiety because I have it, but to think that Jahaan Blake was insecure is bananas to me. So I get that. And I can see how people would feel that about me, but I was a fucking insecurity. I think I was tough, but I was also sensitive. And I just have sort of this loving nature about me, even though I'm tough. Like I always I don't know, I carry this sort of empathy that's certainly developed more over time, but I did wear it a lot. I thought like when I was having a bad day, I did wear it.
Yeah, so did I. I remember one time when Sarah made me stop working and go to the game and get drunk.
She's good for that. She's good for that.
She's like, you're killing the vibe in here. Like you were in a bad place. Get out. I was like, I mean, worse things can happen, right? Other people get fired for stuff like that. I was told to go watch a baseball game and get drunk. Yeah.
That's a good boss right there, I will say. I mean, I never worked for Sarah, but I see how she cares for her people. And I mean, we talk all the time, but I've always admired how much she protects and cares for her people, which I think, I try to do to some extent, but she's just so amazing at it because I didn't always have that. Like I didn't always have someone to say, you know what, you're burnt out. You need to take some time off. Like sometimes I had the opposite of that. So I am someone who definitely appreciates that she does that for other people.
Yeah, it's definitely a hard thing to consistently do and consistently get right. Tell me, how did you deal with insecurity, self-doubt, anxiety, all the things while you're coming up professionally at the same time? Like, how did you deal with it?
I cried a lot, I will say. The whole stupid "there's no crying in baseball" thing, like I cried a lot. But I was very open to people I trusted.
Mhm.
And that could be bosses along the way. That could be media members. It could be Terry Francona. There are times along the way that I was very honest about my insecurities and my fears. And I also needed a lot. I needed a lot of reassurance. I'm a positive reinforcement person. I like positive reinforcement. I'm not going to lie. I do like hearing. Who doesn't like to hear they do a good job? Sometimes I need it. I definitely back then would seek it, but I'd seek it through people I trust. I started dating my husband while traveling with the team. So I had him with me a lot of my journey. So I got to tell him my insecurities and my fears. So I really do think I made a lot of friendships along the way that helped me get through. And I also was always doing the best that I could. And that matters. I wasn't always the best at that job, but I always tried my hardest and I always wanted to do the right thing. And that gets you a long way with people. And that sort of helped cover up some of the mistakes, because even if it wasn't like skill based, the exact right thing to do or way to do it, the fact that I was doing the very best that I knew how to do and was trying to help as much as I could really bought me a lot of comfort with other people and helped me in my job, I think.
I mean, the biggest takeaway from this is you keep admitting I wasn't perfect and I messed up a lot, but I was damn good at my job and I worked really hard. And those things like can live together, and you can grow from intern to SVP, and you're going to make mistakes and you're not going to be perfect along that journey.
I make mistakes all the time. The most important thing about mistakes is owning them. And I am definitely too hard on myself, I think, but I also, if I make a mistake or if I say something that I feel was taken in a way that I didn't mean it, or maybe I feel like I shouldn't have said it, I will own it and address it and move on, which I think is hugely important to be good at your job, is to have that sort of self-awareness and ability to own a mistake and say, you know what, my bad, and I'm sorry, and I'll do it right next time, or how can we fix this?
So talk to us a little bit about director of media relations.
Oh,
So going into that position, like, were you the first female or one of very few? What was that like?
I was definitely the first female for the Red Sox. Still hold that title. But I definitely wasn't the first in sport. In baseball, there were other women at the time. There's a woman named Monica with the Orioles. May she rest in peace. She actually passed away from cancer several years ago. But at the time, I feel like she was my counterpart that actually traveled with the team. There's a lot of women in the PR department throughout baseball, but we were few. There may have been another one or two, but in the American League, everyone in each league was closer, and especially she was within my division. She was someone that also did it, and also I could talk to about that kind of thing, but it was definitely rare, like super rare. And sometimes people may note of that rarity.
Say more about that.
I mean, definitely, as everybody knows, the history of like journalists and the women journalists in the clubhouse. There's a lot of women out there who have written books on this or talked about this. I don't know that PR women have as much, but you are in a locker room, right, all the time. And sometimes you're in the training room, and sometimes you're the only woman in the room or on the plane or on the bus or in the press conference or whatever. So it was at first unsettling, I think, for some people, for some players, coaches, media. I mean, I think there was just this like, I don't know, there's a woman in here. Oh my goodness. But and there were other women media members. So it's not to say that I was always the only one, but I also was allowed in there when media wasn't. And I think at first it was a little unsettling, but I will say for the most part, players were awesome. Once they got used to it, we just figured it out. But I did have someone once, when national broadcasters are doing a game, they come in earlier that day and meet privately with people. It wasn't this, but like Tim McCarver and Joe Buck would, if they're doing the game, they would come in early and talk to some people privately just to get some background. It was something that you do as a broadcaster, just so that they're calling their best game, so that when something happens, they have some sort of knowledge. And sometimes I was there. A lot of the times I was present for that. And one time, like I said, that it wasn't that group, I don't believe, but one time that was happening. And the question posed to the person they were talking to was, what's the biggest difference now than from before? Like, what is the biggest difference you've experienced? And that person was like, well, woman PR director, that's new. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm not here. Don't look at me. Like, as a PR person, you're in the background. And I was like, oh, it didn't roll off the tongue like, oh, there's a woman and that's new and exciting and great. It was just like, oh, there's this. It almost felt like there's this situation I have to deal with. So that was kind of strange. But other than that, it really was mostly fine, or at least people weren't outwardly saying things to me like that all the time. But there was definitely a level of awkwardness, discomfort sometimes, for sure.
Whew. It seems like the perfect recipe for like disaster, right? So you have you're insecure. We all are, right? Like anxiety, self-doubt in a new role where a female hasn't been before. And then you get the comments and things like that. And you try not to misread them, but sometimes you can hear it. You know what I mean? You can read between the lines. Like when you hear something like that, what do you do? Because I would take those things and probably just start to resent that person. It would almost, like I'd energy on that comment, which I know so much better now, not to even, I don't even hear you, but how did you deal with that then? What advice would you give women?
Well, it's different how I dealt with it then and what advice I would give women, I guess, because now I would have called them out. But at the time, I just took it. And then one of the people who was there, one of the broadcasters that was there, sometimes we joke about it now. Like, oh, remember that day? And even then, like, there was a reaction afterwards. Once sort of the interview conversation ended, there was an acknowledgement that just happened. Like, oh my God. And I was like, they're like, don't take it, like, don't worry about it, kind of thing. Like, I felt like they were trying to make sure that I was okay. Like, this is not about you, right? Thing. So I did feel like I had allies in that situation. If I didn't, it probably would have really hurt me more. It didn't actually hurt me. I was just like, oh, this is what I got happening here. Having people there at the time who knew me and witnessed it were like, please don't let this bother you. I'm like, nah, whatever. It is what it is. But yeah, but I haven't forgotten it, obviously. So, it definitely still sticks in my mind. But and it wasn't even that horrible. I mean, believe me, I've heard worse things in my time. But that was one thing that was like specifically that because I was a woman in this job, like that's different. Like, because you just want to blend in, like in a way. Yeah, like I mean, in fairness, like I said, I grew a fourth loving family. I had 3 brothers. So, I always was around men and I always felt comfortable around men because that's how I was brought up. So I think I didn't have that much insecurity about it until it was brought to my attention. Until like, I just thought everyone thought I was normal, just like them, until they pointed it out to me. And I'd be like, oh, okay, I guess I'm not just like you. Or I guess this is a thing that I'm in here.
Yes. But it sounds like allies, you said that seemed to be the key, and not just that one instance, but just throughout your career, leaning on your allies or them just kind of being your champion. Like, don't listen to that. Ignore that just happened. Did I get that right?
Yep. Allies are huge.
Yes.
And they can come from places you don't expect them to, like in PR and literally being the person between the players and the media. I never would have imagined how many of my allies would end up being media members, because you work for the team and you just, and not that players weren't. And Francona was one of my biggest allies, but I just, there are so many media members that were at my wedding, I mean, you just you're in it together. And so that was a surprise to me, for sure, is where you never know where your allies are going to come from.
So I'm hearing you say for you, they kind of just came naturally.
Yep.
And I imagine it had a lot to do with your work ethic. I'm just going to go out there.
Yeah, my work ethic was big. And also, like I said earlier, people just want to know that you're doing the best you can. And when you're in between players and media, for example, media just want to know that you're trying your best to get what they need. And players want to know that you are looking out for them and not putting them in a position to fail, or certainly not intentionally putting them in a position to fail. That you have everyone's best interest. That's the thing I always try to manage, which is a very difficult thing to manage when you're in between 2 groups of people that don't really like each other that much at times. And both sides, I feel like I sort of had some respect because both sides knew that I was willing to go the extra mile on behalf of each side. So even if I wasn't your cup of tea, necessarily. Like, you knew that you had to have that respect because I was trying my hardest to get you what you needed. And sometimes I just couldn't. And I think when they see that you're not, media very savvy, and when they see that you're not, they can read that. They know.
Oh, that's really good advice for anybody who really wants to get into the media relations space.
Yeah, the trip.
And the player space. That's, yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say, that's got to be, I mean, that's got to be tricky, especially when you look at the players. And if you grew up with baseball or whatever sport you're in, and they're bigger than life. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I got a job. Oh, I'm working with players. Like, I will never forget when I first met or had to interact with Kevin Millar. And I was so like, I had
I think
that
that's probably true of everybody.
Oh my God.
In the world that's interacts with Kevin Millar.
Well, and I think because
that stays with you. I actually had a conversation with someone the other day about they were out with Kevin Millar and had a Kevin Millar story. I'm like, we all have our Kevin Millar stories.
Well, mine is more just like I and I didn't grow up a Red Sox fan. So like all of this for me was like I was just becoming one, like a couple of years before I got the job, and then I'm here. And then they're like, okay, go pick out the back kids and take them to the dugout. And I'm like, this is during or prior to the game. And I'm like, okay, I got to go you want me to go in the dugout? Okay, got it. And then they're like, make sure, and you hear all these like unspoken rules. Don't talk to the players. Don't do, you know what I mean? Like, make sure you present yourself in a certain way. So I'm like, there's too many rules right now. I don't even know how to act like myself. Right. And then, I'm sitting there with the kids and I'm like, okay, as players come out, some of them may talk to you, some may have to go do their job and they can't talk, and I'm getting them all prepped so they're ready to like have a great interaction. And then out comes Kevin Millar, and the three of us, me and the two kids, are just like mouth open, don't know what to say. And I'm like, oh my God, it's my job to make this not awkward, and I'm not doing it, and I don't know what to say, and I'm starstruck. And then he was really, thank God
I'll say there couldn't have been a better person.
You're absolutely right.
I mean, he's just glorious, just such a magnetic personality. But I hear you.
Yeah, I got lucky that he carried it all and probably didn't even notice, like just was focused on the kids. That was the most important thing. But what would you say to not women who have to pick back kids, but women who are going to, who are in media relations, player relations, and trying to like just navigate making those relationships and how you do it professionally but authentically, and they make it matter?
It's funny, everyone always says, or at least when you're growing up and you're raising kids, where you treat everybody the same, where you cannot, everybody's different, you have to treat everybody different. Like, you don't treat everybody the same like that. I mean, there's cases in life where that is something sort of you need to do, maybe it's like from a rule perspective, but you need to figure out who people are and how to work with them. And that, I think, was super important to getting things done. Is I had to know a guy's schedule on a game day. Do not talk to this person. Like, it's just, you just get to know people. It wasn't a rule. It was more like, I'm not going to get anywhere if I talk to him the day he's pitching. I mean, forget it. If you're a starting pitcher, you just don't talk to the guy on the day he's pitching. But there's certain other guys, like maybe it gets close to the game, you don't talk to them, or maybe you get them at the right time, or you talk about the right things. Like, there's just everyone's different. You even find out who's insecure and how to get them to do what you need based on hitting the right points, or asking the right way, or showing the right respect. And the same way with the media, like, you have to learn. It's so important to know, like, it's public relations, it's people relations, and it's so important to understand how people work, how to get the best out of everybody. When you have to say no, how to do it in a way where it's not personal for anybody. It just isn't going to work out. So I would say that's the biggest thing, is you can't treat everyone the same, because nobody's the same. And you have to figure out, you can have this rule book all day long and say, this is how you ask a player to do an interview, and this is the time frame you have to ask them in. It's like, you can just throw all those rules out the window, because it's not life. And so it's important to realize they're people. Yeah, they make a lot of money. That's really the only difference between you and them. And they have families, and they have parents, and they go through things, and people have trauma and backgrounds and things. And so I just think it's very important that you take a step back from the famous starstruck millionaire aspect, and take a step back and say, how am I best going to work with this person? But you also have to be who you are, because if you fake it, they will sniff you out in a heartbeat.
I mean, that could be just that little snippet there could be the podcast. That was great advice.
So my Fenway moment, yours is the bad kids in the dugout. Mine is, it was either my first or second day as an intern in 2000, and the office was totally different then. Again, it was old ownership, so the ballpark hadn't been redone the way it is now. There were so many fewer people there, so it was just not the same layout at all. And there was this little triangular room. We called the door the A1 door. It was behind grandstand, maybe 25 or something like that. But anyway, at the time, there was this very triangle shaped room where we stored recycling bins. So when I was doing my little clippings and I was throwing out the newspaper, I'd have to go into open this door, this triangle room, put the newspapers in and go back to my desk. So I'm in this triangle room, and I didn't know anything except I come from the office, I open this door, I go into this triangle room, I let the door shut behind me, and I had forgotten my keys. And it was one of those doors. There's some weird doors in Fenway where you have to buzz to get in and you have to buzz to get out. So there's buzzers on each side. And I was like, oh my God. So there was another door that had a buzzer so I couldn't get out either way. I'm trapped in this little room. And I didn't know, I had no idea what to do. I'm just standing there. I didn't have a phone on me. I'm literally trapped in this little room. I'm on my second day of work. So I start heading towards the other door that I didn't come through. And I don't remember, I think someone was coming in as I was coming out, because I was almost at the point that I was gonna have to shout. I was either gonna have to shout or I was gonna have to sit in there all day with the recycling bin until someone came in to recycle something. And so, which I don't know who was recycling anything other than me, because I was the only one cutting out the newspapers. So I wait, someone opens the door. I'm in grandstand 25 or whatever, 28, whatever it is. I walk out and I'm like, oh my God, I'm in the park. That was my moment that I walked out. I'm like, okay, because before that, I had been within the park, but I'd been as a fan, but then I just really been in the offices. And that was the first day. I literally opened a door and there I was in the ballpark. And that was my oh, this is this could have been a disaster, but B, this is amazing. Oh my God, this is my job. Yeah. But can you imagine? I'd be help. Yeah.
Okay, so your second day as an intern, you were trapped somewhere within Fenway
with
Park.
The recycling bins. Yeah. Yeah. Just waiting. I had no idea what I was going to do, but now I can't go to the bathroom without my phone. But at the time I was like, I don't even think I probably didn't even have a phone at that time in 2000. I don't think it was a thing. I'm just oh, hope someone finds me. But yeah, so then it worked out. And then so I had my moment. I'm like, wow, this is very cool.
Yes, that's really funny. And in 2000, we had phones, but they were you didn't carry them everywhere because they were only free. Remember after 7:00 when you used to?
Yep. Oh my God, I forgot about that.
Free nights and weekends.
Yeah, who's calling me anyway? Yeah. They could try to text me, but it would take all day because I'm typing 1, 2, 3 for C, it's
oh my gosh, that's so funny. All right. Are you ready for rapid fire questions?
Oh yeah. Ooh, this is fun. All right. Get the adrenaline going. Do it.
Everyone else is no.
Is this word association?
No, it's not. All right. 12 easy questions. First thing that comes to your mind. What is your favorite sports moment?
04 World Series, but I would say a close second was John Lester's no-hitter.
Ooh. What is something people always get wrong about you?
I think people think I'm tougher than I am.
Yeah. Yep. What is one food you wouldn't want to give up?
I love food. I do. I thought the question would be a food I hate because there's 3 of them. I would say chicken wings.
Oh yeah, I had that for dinner last night. So good.
Yeah.
Air fryer. Everyone who's listening, go buy an air fryer.
Yeah, that's what I haven't done that yet.
Life-changing. Are you a morning or a night person?
Night.
Favorite holiday?
At late night. Favorite holiday? Used to be Thanksgiving, but I would have to say now with the kids, it's Christmas.
Aw. What job would you absolutely be horrible at doing?
Selling. Awful.
What product would you seriously stockpile if you found out they were going out of business?
I do this already and they're not even out of business. Honestly, this sounds so not like me, but there's this coconut oil I used to wash my face from Skin NY. I can't live without it.
Yeah. Skin and wine, you said?
Did you say skin and wine? No, I wish it was wine.
It's because I'm on Whole30.
I'm drinking it. No, it's not. It's skinny. So SKINNY.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. I'm going to look that up. Link it in the show notes. Everyone likes a good
but you
product.
already have gorgeous skin, so you certainly don't need it.
Thanks, Mom and Dad. That's for them. Okay. What's your favorite app?
Wow. This is not very rapid fire for me. I do Sporkle.
Oh, I've never heard of that.
But it's a game. It's a trivia app.
Ah, okay, got it. Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram?
Depends for what. I mean, Facebook, I would say, is how I best communicate with people, my friends and stuff.
Who is your biggest inspiration in life?
My mom.
As a child, what did you wish to become when you grew up?
I was thinking of this morning in the shower where I do all my thinking. Pediatrician. I want to be a pediatrician, which is hilarious because I get the heebie-jeebies anytime I see any sort of cut or blood. Like I can't even look at getting a shot. So I don't know why I thought that was a good idea, but I think it's because I didn't think sports was a possible career.
All right, that's fair. And finish this sentence. The future of women working in sports is?
Infinite?
Yeah. You can say a whole paragraph about that. I know.
I was looking for a better word, but it's here. It's coming. They're going to be playing men's sports. So certainly it's just going to get more and more higher and higher.
Mm-hmm. This has been amazing.
Oh,
Thank you so much.
I'm not even sure what I said at this point, but it felt like a fun conversation with someone I haven't seen in a long time. So
I know, right? It was fun to catch up and learn how much we made when we first started.
It's gross. It's so gross.
It really is.
Yeah.
Tell me, how can people get in touch with you if they wanted to?
Yeah, so I definitely think email is honestly the best for me, which is pkenn, Kenn at redsox.com, because I stink at LinkedIn. I'm on there. I stink at it. Twitter I use mostly for work stuff, but like my Instagram and Facebook are mostly personal. So you could get me there, but I think I'd best react or respond if you get me on email.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So what did you think of this episode? Do you know another woman who works or is aspiring to work in sports? Would you do me a favor and share this with them? It would mean so much if together we could support and inspire other women on their journey. And let's stay connected. I love meeting and talking to new people. Follow me on Instagram at Jahaan Blake and join the free Game of Her Own community by visiting jahaanblake.com. I can't wait to meet you.